today we are going back to the basics of Mosaic Crochet, and I'm going to give you guys just a step-by-step of everything you need to know before you get into that first tutorial and that first swatch. If you have seen me before, you may know that I do quite a lot of Mosaic Crochet designs, free patterns, step-by-step tutorials, but I really want to just go back to the beginning and give you guys a really thorough kind of story of Mosaic Crochet in the sense of what stitches you need to know, why, placements, reading the charts, a little bit of everything, so that you guys feel completely prepared to start your first swatch and not like you've been rushed into the process at all. I'm Jessie of Crochet by Jessie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel, and let's get into today's video. Before I get into showing you guys a chart that we're going to look through and kind of dissect together, the first thing I want to recommend is what type of yarn you should be using and what rough crochet hook size you should also be using. I found that when I was first starting out Mosaic Crochet, the fibre that I found the easiest to work with was acrylic yarn. The reason for that is because it typically doesn't split, it's really easy to work with, it's not particularly tough at all, and it also means you can use a slightly larger crochet hook as well. With that being said, I would also recommend that you use maybe a 4 or a 4.5mm crochet hook. Different forms of fibre, such as thin cotton, will require smaller, but I think when you're learning the basics, it's good to use a slightly bigger crochet hook just because it makes understanding the stitches, seeing the stitches just a lot easier. So the first two things to take away: try and start it out with standard acrylic yarn, and try to use a 4 to a 4.5mm crochet hook. With that being said, I'm now going to show you guys a chart. I'm going to show you from a first person perspective how to read it, what each square means, and why the chart looks the way it looks. Here is the chart that I'm going to be talking you guys through, and we're just going to have a look at what does all of this mean and how does it get you with a finished heart swatch at the end of your project. So first of all, you're going to notice that there are loads of boxes, kind of like a regular pixel chart, but this is done in a slightly different way. The first thing that you should note though is that there are loads of boxes. Some are blank, some have got an X in it, and then there are also two different colours. We've got the background colour and we've got the colour for the heart. The first thing for you guys to note is that every single box that you see is one stitch. So the type of stitch will vary, and then I will explain to you why, but every single square you see is a stitch that you're going to be doing. And it's important to note that you'll see at the bottom it shows how many squares you've got across, which is 26. So when you're working up this project, it should always be a total of 26 stitches across. What type of stitch, like I said before, will always vary between two. There are only two types, so don't worry about me saying they'll vary. So, but then no matter what, it will always be a total of 26 stitches. And then it also shows you how many rows need to be done before it's finished. And you'll see there are 27 rows in total that you need to do, and then your entire heart will be done. Now that I have explained that every single box refers to a stitch, I'm now going to talk about what the blank boxes mean as opposed to what the X boxes mean. So first of all, you see that there's loads of blank boxes at the bottom. You also see they're blank at the top, and then you'll start to notice that there are some with crosses in them and X's in them. So the blank boxes that you see refer to a single crochet. This is using US terms. If you're doing UK terms, apologies. I know I'm from the UK, but I cannot get my head around UK terms, so I do US terms. So all of the blank boxes you see refer to a single crochet, and then all of the boxes with an X/a cross in them refers to a double crochet. The next thing we're going to talk about, you'll see we have alternating colours that are blank boxes, and they're changing every single row. The reason for that is because one, it is indicating what colour you're going to be using, whether you're using the background colour or the heart detail colour. And two, it's also just that first stitch that you do, the first and last stitch for these swatches are a single crochet in the front and the back loop. So whenever you start or end it, the reason it's left like this is because one, it's going to be visible, you're going to see this on either side, and two, it's showing the colour of it, that it's going to be for the entire row. And then the final thing to note is the single crochet you do for that is in the front and the back loop. That's not the case for any of the other single crochets, but it's always the case for the first one and the last one. The next thing to note, the colour here, you may be going, Jessie, I'm using the red yarn here for the row 2, but it's not visible at all on this part of the chart here. That is absolutely fine. The reason I've done that, first of all, is because I wanted to explain when I created this initial chart as a beginner chart, how Mosaic Crochet works in the sense of how you hide the other colour. So I thought it was rather fitting to hide the entire of that first row of red by just illustrating how Mosaic Crochet works. So when you see the X/cross marked stitch, you're doing a double crochet, but you're not doing a double crochet into the stitch from the previous row. You're not going to do a double crochet into the row from row 2. What you're instead going to do is you're going to drop down, and you're going to drop and basically conceal that second row here. You're going to drop down into the first row of single crochet, and you're going to work into the front loop, which has been left available because, as I said, when you work a single crochet, except for the first and last stitch, you're only going to do so into the back loop only. The reason you only work into the back loop is so that when you then drop down with your double crochet, you have the front loop to actually work the double crochet into. If you didn't do that, you wouldn't be able to drop down and go into that previous row of the same colour. And then if you can't do that, you can't create a lovely design like this. So the entirety of the third row is just a whole case of doing a double crochet, dropping down and working into that first row of single crochet in the same background colour on row 1. So it means that that entire first row of red is completely concealed except for the first and the last stitch, because that is a single crochet front and back loop, and the entirety of the sides are always going to be available. But this just shows you guys how you can hide your secondary colour for the entirety of the project, and then what you choose to reveal is how you end up with a design like this heart. The next part of this chart that we're going to talk about, because I feel like it's quite an important part, is how we start the design heart in this aspect. So looking at this, again, you kind of ignore the colours that you see on the chart. What's more important is to focus on whether or not it's marked as doing a double crochet or a single crochet. So don't let it confuse you when you're doing a whole row of single crochet and all of it's red. So you're like, why is it just showing that part as red and not the rest of it? There is a reason, and I will explain that in a second, but just don't overthink it. Focus on, is this blank and single crochet, or has this got a cross or an X, and is it double crochet? And then it will make things a lot easier for you from that point. So looking at the fourth row, which is this colour here, we're using the red. The entirety of this row is blank. So ignore that, you can see the red here, but the entirety of the row is blank. So what that means is you're just doing a regular row of the single crochet in the back loop only, except for this stitch here and this stitch here, which is the single crochet front and back loop. The reason you see this as red is going to become more apparent in the next few rows, so I'll explain it when we get to it, but just don't overthink it for this time being. We're going to start to look at this row here next, which is row 5. We're using the background colour, and what you'll notice is when we were choosing to conceal all of the red on row 3, we did an entire row of just the double crochet. However, in the middle here, we have chosen not to do a double crochet. So we've got double crochets all on the side, but then the 2 stitches here have just been left blank. And you may be going, why have they been left blank? They've been left blank to enable the possibility to drop down in the next row to go into the red, to start to display the red in your design. So the basic rule when it comes to Mosaic Crochet and adding a new colour and not just having it in the background is you need to basically have like a 3-row setup. So you'll see it here. You have the first row of single crochet in the colour that you're going to want to display. You have a secondary row of single crochet, which is the alternate colour that you're not going to want to show. And then you have the third, which is the final one of that little setup, where you're able to then drop down double crochet into the initial row of the colour that you're choosing. So that's kind of what's happening here at the bottom of the red heart. You have the first row of single crochet. So this is red, and we've left the red available by not then double crocheting down in the background colour in the row after. So this is the first row of single crochet that's in the red. There's a second row of single crochet in the background colour. And then the third one here is the double crochet, and because the previous row is a single crochet, you can then drop down 2 rows back to the previous time you used that same colour, the red, and then work into that front loop, and then do your first 2 double crochets to start to work up the bottom of the hearts. So what to take from that is you can't just go straight into, let's say right here, I can't have a double crochet in red right above this section here because I haven't got enough single crochet set up. I haven't got enough of the red being shown and then another row of single crochet that I can then work over and drop down to get to the red again. Whereas because I've got the 2 setup rows here, and then the same when I'm introducing more of the red, and even more, even more, even more, all the way to the other sides of the hearts, you need to have a single crochet row in red, a single crochet row in the background, and then the third row in the red, you need to then be able to drop down into that previous row of red that you did 2 rows prior. If you don't do that, then you're not going to end up with a design like this. It's very important when it comes to mosaic crochet. So always think of it as a rule of 3. If you want to have one colour show, you need to have single crochet in that colour you want to show, a single crochet in the other colour that you'll then be concealing, and then you go back to the original colour again and then drop down to the previous row of the same colour and just work into the front loop that you left available for it. You will also see that this is the same case when you're starting to reintroduce the background colour. So when the heart is done, you'll see we've got 2 blank rows here where you've got the single crochets where you're starting to get ready to then drop down and be able to go into the background colour. So you've got it here, you've got it at the top here, you've got it in this section, but you'll see a really good example is this bit here. You'll see the first 2 rows, you've got the single crochet row in the background colour, the single crochet row in the red, and then you've got the double crochet where you drop down into that previous row of the background colour to kind of work and have the background colour start to show again. But the next thing, we're expanding and we're doing that on either side. So you're following that same rule here. However, you'll notice that after this point, you have a row of crosses, a blank row, a row of crosses. And the reason for that is a lot more simple than you guys may picture. When you have a double crochet and you're not planning to change the colour that you see anymore, you're planning to continue having that double crochet, which is the background colour, you want that to be the same. So technically, that now counts as the first single crochet. That's the first lot of the repeat of 3. So you've got the background colour, you have the red that you plan to skip, and then you go back to the background colour and then you can drop down into the front loop of what is now the double crochets. You can do that, you'll see from this point onwards, once you had the initial setup, that was then the case where it was going single crochet, double, because once you've done the setup and you're continuing with it, then you can continue to do it. The same with the hearts. We have the initial 2 rows to set up and then the double crochet, and then you have the 1 row of single crochet in the background colour that you're going to conceal, and then you drop down and you conceal it. So you're not going to always have to do 2 rows of single crochet. You'll always have to do 2 rows before you can then do the third, which is the drop down, but it's not always single crochet. Just when you are either starting your entire swatch, when you're incorporating a new colour such as the heart into it, or when you're reincorporating it, so your detail that you're doing in the alternate colours finishing up and you want to go back to the background colour like we did at the top of this heart here. I hope this has helped make sense of just what this overall chart means and why. And if you guys have any more questions or that there's just anything else that you're finding a bit more confusing, do not hesitate to ask in the comments. Let me know what you want to have more clarification on, and I will happily do a part 2 and just go into more detail. I can answer any of your questions that maybe it's a bit more difficult to do over a comment. If you want to see it visually, then I am more than happy to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys are walking away with just a little bit more confidence when it comes to mosaic crochet, why you do what you do when it comes to mosaic crochet to get the results that you do, and hopefully you're feeling a lot better at starting out your first ever mosaic crochet tutorial. If that is the case, I do recommend checking out the rest of my playlist. I have quite a few free patterns now out there. They're only small swatches, but it's perfect for just getting your confidence built. And you can either watch it alongside the tutorial to make sure you're doing it right, or you can just download the chart and just completely try and do it yourself, and then maybe go to the video after to see if you were successful or not. With that being said, if you don't want to lose this channel, then do consider subscribing to make sure you can find me again to see all of my additional tutorials. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!